Michael Kazin is a history professor at Georgetown University. He is co-editor of Dissent magazine, and he is the author of the book American Dreamers: How the Left Changed a Nation. In his latest article for Slate, The End of Outrage, he asks the question everybody should be asking, which is, in an age of growing inequality and plutocratic control of the political system, why aren't more people outraged? Why aren't more people taking to the streets? Professor Kazin, thank you so much for joining us.
Good to be here.
Listen, this is a question that I know that you and your writing have asked from time to time over the years. I and others have asked this question as well. I know the immediate inspiration for your asking it now was Steve Fraser's book, The Age of Acquiescence. We will be talking to him in this episode of the show. Great. But I wanted to ask you specifically, as a historian of the American left and of progressive movements in this country, I wanted to repeat back to you the question you asked in your Slate piece. Why aren't people out in the streets demanding change right now?
Well, it's a complicated answer, of course, and in 1,000 words or so, I could only say so much. But I think one of the key elements here is that the people who would be out in the streets aren't quite sure who they are. In the past, in the late 19th century, early 20th century, up and through the 1930s, as Steve Fraser describes very nicely in his book, they were farmers, they were workers, they were the producing classes, which was used to be a moral term as well as an economic one that meant everybody who did something useful for society. Now it's unclear what folks who are unhappy with what's going on would call themselves, and that's very important, I think, because people need an identity, to grab onto, to say, well, we all are in this together. Occupy, as you know, tried to push the idea of the 99%, and for a while that seemed useful, but it's in the end, it's just a number, and clearly everybody in that 99% doesn't agree with the critique Occupy was making. So I think part of the problem is who are these people, capital P perhaps, who should be out in the streets, should be organizing. You need institutions to put pressure on those in power, but you also need a sense of community, a sense of togetherness, a sense of identity, and I think that is lacking.
So, and that's a fascinating point. I think, those of us who, and I'll be exploring this more with Fraser too, but those of us who know the work, for example, of the South American educator Paulo Freire, know that the idea of what he would call internalizing the oppressor consciousness, or the idea that we identify not with the people who are like us, but with the people we would like to imagine ourselves becoming. Is that an element in this sort of diffusion of protest?
Oh, I think it is. One of the things that Fraser does a nice job of in the book, and he's done this in other writings too, is talking about the populism of the elite. That is the idea that everybody in power who wants to stay in power finds ways of identifying themselves as the strivers, the upwardly mobile. They work harder than anybody else does, this kind of thing. Even the Koch brothers, billionaires who actually didn't make their own money, at least in the beginning, they inherited a lot of it, see themselves as victims of the big government. They represent the ordinary people who are being put down by the tyranny of the government. Now, of course, American consciousness of politics is complicated. Lots of folks don't buy that image. On the other hand, there's no alternative image they have to put in its place. And so in that vacuum, a lot of bad stuff takes place, and a lot of apathy happens as well.
Yes, as we've certainly seen, we're talking with Professor Michael Kazin, historian at Georgetown, about the current state. I was about to say the current state of the American left, but I have to say, when I talk to people, especially non-Americans, but anybody, and the phrase American left comes up, I don't really know what that means anymore. Is there an American left in any meaningful?
I mean, if you listen to Republicans, they think the American left is everyone from Harry Reid to Noam Chomsky or something. I mean, it's, the definition of the left has gotten muddled, certainly. It used to be, when I was in college in the 1960s, it used to be the left was opposed to liberalism, but now there's not much of a left to be opposed to anything. There's fragments of a left, which is, my magazine, for example, is a magazine of the left, Dissent, but we really see ourselves as trying to help to provide ideas for for several movements, but there's not one left movement as there once was.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I struggle with it a little bit, and I entered college in 1970, so I was not far behind you. I guess I struggle with it a little bit in the sense that even I hear people self-identify as of the left and then repeat or promote what I would consider, neoliberal economic policies of centrist or right-leaning Democrats or whatever. So I guess I don't know if part of the problem, does there need to be a more cohesive self-identified left, or is that sort of tangential?
Well, that might help.
Problem?
I mean, more important is, as I said before, self-identified people. So there has to be a sort of thickness, if you will, a huskiness to what that means. So right now, it's very abstract. And as Fraser mentions in his book, it doesn't help that everyone from Barack Obama to the AFL-CIO, liberals, progressive groups, liberal politicians talk about the middle class, which a lot of Americans identify with. But the middle class is more of a consumer identity than anything else. And after all, most Americans work, and at some point we have to get back or go forward to a sense that work is essential to what human beings do, and it's work and workers who are being exploited, disenfranchised, disrespected, and underpaid.
And in a sense, even the word worker has become, feels almost like an artifact of the past, as if everyone were an entrepreneur today.
Right. And of course, most people have different identities depending on whether at work or at home. Once people leave the job where they mostly earn wages, work for other people, then they go to the mall or they go to wherever, and they want to be consumers and they want to be middle class in that sense. So, and that's not a bad thing, of course. Everyone should have a comfortable life if they want it. But I think, and in the period late 19th century up to the 1930s, when you had these very strong progressive movements based on economic progressivism, you had an economic left. That is, people really identify with their work much more, and in part because people's work was more connected to farming or actually making products. Now, services, clerical work, IT work, which is most of the kind of jobs people have these days, sometimes is not as clear a sense of what you're actually making, producing for society, and that I think is one of the things that sociologically has made it more difficult to form a identity among what we used to be called the working class.
Well, and not to bring that four-letter word Marx into the question, but isn't that in a sense classic alienation?
Yeah, it is. It is. Of course, Marx didn't foresee a time when people would be alienated and yet have computers in their pockets.
Right. Who did? But so, okay. I guess I would ask a final question, Professor Michael Kazin of Georgetown, historian. There are signs. It would be easy enough to despair, but there are signs of hope. Some people see hope in the Black Lives Matter movement. Some people see hope in the fight for 15 and the food workers' struggle to get a living wage. I'm going to put you in an unfair spot since a historian looks back and not forward. But if you had to guess, where do you think we'll be in 5 years with all of this? Right. Sorry about that.
I mean, there will and there always will be, to paraphrase George H.W. Bush, 1,000 points of light on the left. The question is, where will the huge issue come from? I thought the Great Recession would produce that issue, the way civil rights did, the War of Vietnam did, the Great Depression did, monopolistic capital did 100 years ago. I'm not sure. And in order to have a stronger left, we need that issue for people to rally around. Right now, we don't have it. In 5 years, I wish I could predict. I don't know if we'll have it then.
All right. Well, in the great words of the great political philosopher Yogi Berra, it ain't over till it's over. Anyway.
That's for sure.
Thanks so much for joining us, Michael Kazin, history professor, co-editor of Dissent, which people should read, and author of American Dreamers, How the Left Changed a Nation. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
I'm Richard RJ Eskow, and this is The Zero Hour.